What's this? A letter for me.
Welcome to another episode of Remember the Great Sports. Today, on Through the Mail Thursdays, we're going to look at 3 envelopes that I recently got back. I'm not sure what sport they are. I have a postmark here from Phoenix, Arizona, so I can go any 3 directions with football, basketball, or baseball, since there's many people that are retired that live in that area. So I'm going to open this up, and I think the other 2, I know where they're from, and if I'm right on this Phoenix one, we will go with, these are all football. But I have to be sure on this because I wrote some former Phoenix Suns as well. I got it right. So, luck of the draw there. This is former Minnesota Viking, all-time great, Steve Jordan. He commonly goes by Steven Jordan. On 1, 2, 3, and 4. So Steve Jordan, the former tight end of the Minnesota Vikings for many years, sent back 4 through the mail. Thank you very much for doing so. So a little bit about Steve Jordan. He played his college football at Brown University. He was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings in 1982 in the 7th round. So he was not a highly regarded draft pick by any means. He spent his entire career with the Minnesota Vikings from 1982 to 1994. He appeared in 6 Pro Bowls as a tight end for the Vikings, and he's listed as one of the 50 greatest Vikings of all time. Over his career, he had nearly 500 receptions at 498, so he caught the ball almost 500 times, for 6,307 yards with 28 total touchdowns. He's the father of Cameron Jordan, who's the defensive end for the New Orleans Saints, who also was a Pro Bowler. So, Steve Jordan was a very consistent player for many years for the Vikings. A good tight end, a guy that could, do some good blocking and do some catching in the same breath. Very underrated for his career. The Vikings weren't very good while he played there. They were kind of lax most of the time that he was on that team, meaning they didn't make the playoffs all that often. They weren't like the Vikings teams of the 70s or the Vikings teams of the late 90s, early 2000s, or even today. The Vikings back then were not that great. So he played in obscurity for most of his career. There were also a lot of other tight ends during that era that were really shining a little bit more than him. So that's why he's very commonly overlooked for his career, as a Minnesota Viking and as an all-time great. With that being said, maybe there's an outside opportunity that someday somebody will look at his stats and say, this guy belongs in the Hall of Fame. I would certainly think the Vikings have him in their Hall of Fame. I don't know that off the top of my head, but if you're one of the 50 greatest Vikings ever, I would assume you are. So thank you, Mr. Jordan, for signing those 4. I had never gotten your autograph before and very happy to do so. All right, so this next one is postmarked Yep, that is a football guy. And it is one of the greatest Philadelphia Eagles. Also not in the Hall of Fame. Probably should be strongly considered to be a Hall of Famer. And that is middle linebacker Bill Bergey. Or Bergey. I want to say Bergey. On 1, 2, 3. Get that out of the glare. And a 4th one. So, Bill Bergey, big time player for the Eagles. Again, wasn't somebody that was a big time draft pick. He played at Arkansas State University. Not a really highly renowned school for football. He was drafted in the 2nd round by the Bengals in 1969. And he played from 1969 to 1973 with the Bengals. In his rookie season, he made the Pro Bowl. so that's pretty impressive. He actually made the Pro Bowl 5 times during his career. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pro as a linebacker for the Eagles. He is in the Eagles Hall of Fame, and he is also in the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. So one could argue that this is one of the greatest Philadelphia Eagles linebackers ever to play, and this guy could be considered probably for the the Pro Football Hall of Fame as well. So one of the unique things about Mr. Bergey that I was reading about on his page here is during his playing days, he actually served as a lieutenant in the United States Army Reserve. So Mr. Bergey is, to me, a national hero, somebody that is not recognized for being a soldier, more an athlete than a soldier, but there's a very short list of people that are professional athletes that also serve their country. I think it's excellent to point out this little detail because they're a dime a dozen nowadays. I'm not saying that there's not people that played professional sports that don't serve in the military now, but back in a different era, in a different war, going way back to the World War One, the mentality of professional athletes towards war was a lot different than it is today. I mean, could you imagine if you saw Patrick Mahomes being sent overseas to fight for his country for the next 2 years, losing 2 years out of his NFL career just to serve his country? That's very doubtful ever going to happen again. Now, I'm not saying that we can't get drafted. Of course, I'm in the selective service just like every other able-bodied American that is supposed to sign up for the selective service. So that day could come that, athletes are drafted into the military, but there's not too many that go sign up in addition to their football careers. So, just unique. Pat Tillman, of course, everybody knows his story, what happened to him. But, that's an unfortunate thing that happened, and, he is one that I look up to as an athlete, even to this day. So, Mr. Bergey, enough about your military career. Not that it's not important, but, on the field as a football player, as an All-Pro, you were one of the greatest, and I thank you very much for signing my cards and sending them back to me. All right, and finally, another one posted from Las Vegas, Nevada, and this is indeed one of the best, and this is a Hall of Famer, and that is Hall of Fame lineman Tom Mack on 1, 2, and a third. Makes 3. There's a little smudge down there on that one, but that card's beat the heck anyway, so who cares? I guess. But he was nice enough to sign the 3 there. And Tom Mack is one of the best, Los Angeles Rams ever to play. Also one of the best linemen ever to play the game. So, Tom Mack played his college football for the Michigan Wolverines. He was an 11-time Pro Bowler with the Los Angeles Rams. He spent his entire career with the Rams from 1966 to 1978, so 12 years in the league, which again, going back to some of the other people that I've written from this era, Ralph Neely comes to mind. Being an offensive lineman during that period is very impressive. Very impressive. 4-time first-team All-Pro. When he was in college, he was in the first-team All-Big Ten in 1965. He's in the University of Michigan Hall of Fame, of course. He's also in the Football Hall of Fame in Canton. Played many, many years for the Rams. Then after he finished with his playing career, he finished up his degree at Michigan and got a degree in engineering and worked in the engineering field for a little while until his second retirement, I guess you would call it. So, thank you, Mr. Mack, for signing those 3 for me. a great Hall of Famer to add to anybody's collection. I want to thank Mr. Bergey as well. And I also want to thank Mr. Steve Jordan of Vikings fame for signing as well. Thanks for watching another episode of Through the Mail Thursdays. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to your comments below.